Okay, so we're going to be continuing on from our morning workshop where we modelled our object based on the artwork, and what I've created here is a simple cobble model, and we've got an object created by planes and some solid volumes. And what we're going to be exploring today in Rhino is how we actually go about making that one-to-one in the software. So zoom in a little bit on there. We've got objects of intersecting planes, rotations, we've got cutouts, we've got thicknesses. If we look at the yellow card there, we've got sweeps. So we should be able to make this quite quickly in Rhino. In order to get some semblance of accuracy, I'll be using my Vernier Gauge, and this guy is amazing because what he allows us to do, if I zoom in, is get accurate millimeter readings, and we're able to go in and measure 187. We'll be able to tell the length of these objects as they come into play using the vernier, and we also have our trusty metal ruler that can basically tell us the heights, the widths, the thicknesses, the locations of these on the actual board itself, and heights as we are going to build this in Rhino. So my ruler is telling me that my baseboard is about 130 by 130, let's just call it that. I'm going to use a box, and I'm going to start my box from 0, so I'm going to type 0 in, press enter, and I'm going to type in 130 by 130, and now it's actually asking for a depth. If I look over on the perspective, the depth, I think I'm going to choose -5. What I need to do now is get my objects in the viewport to be visible to all, so I'm going to right click on this guy, zoom extents. Just going to navigate all the viewports, and let's see how far I can get with using all just perspective. Now my perspective view is set to shaded, and I can use this drop down menu here on the left hand side above the word perspective, sorry, to the right of the word perspective, and we've got a range of options here. Rendered gives us this nice ambient occluded rendered view. Ghosted is a viewport I use a lot, but sometimes makes your eyes go a little bit cross-eyed, so it can be a bit tricky. Pen, these kind of things are a bit gimmicky really, so I'll be using shaded, ghosted and rendered. Okay, so what I want to do first is possibly map in some of the objects that I want to use, so I'm going to build those separately and then drop them on the baseboard later in their correct position. First of which is this large object I've got in front of me, the I don't know what I'm going to call it, object 1 is about 50mm by 100mm by 2mm thickness. And that makes sense because I remember cutting that strip 100mm. Just click anywhere, click in the box again, 100 by 50 by 2, and there we go, we've got our plane. What I'm going to do is move that around with the gumball, rotate it. If you use snap, it will snap to 90 degrees, or depending on what you've got your snap settings to, but I think the default is 90, and navigate around. Now it can be quite tricky, as you can see from in my perspective view, it looks like it's on the baseboard, but if I pan around you'll notice that it's hovering around, which is why it's great. Didn't last very long, did it? Just modelling in perspective. It's great to navigate around and use these different viewports to get it to fit. Now the reason I can just drag around and it snaps to the object is because I'm using whole numbers. I will be rounding things up most of the time, so even if it is a decimal point measurement, I'll just round it up for ease. And importantly, at the bottom here, on the bottom grid, I've got grid snap activated, so it will only snap to that 1mm grid, which is great. So I can move things quite freely. I can move them out the scene and back in the scene, and know that I'm going to be able to drop them where I grabbed them from. Another more complex form that I've got here is a plane with a angled edge, so that both sides are not equal, and it actually has a cutout as well. So we'll look at a few options on how we might produce this shape. So plane number 2 is going to be 70 mm long with a max height of 100. So let's try a few approaches to this. I'll use the top view. What I'll do is I'll use the line tool, Polyline, and I'll actually draw that out. So I'm just going to, doesn't matter where I start for this project. I'm going to go up by 100, press enter, and I've now got my curve, which is maximum 100. Press shift and left click, and I'm actually going to press enter to close that line. So I've just got a single line created there. I know that I've got a line coming from the bottom, which is 70. So that's the base. And if I go up there now, I've got 65. So I type 65 in, and now I know that goes there, and I'm able to join that up. Enter when done, or you can use a cheeky right click. I'm going to select those two shapes because the way that I built it was probably not the best. I've got two curves here. I've got a curve with 3 lines and a single line. So select them both, and I'm going to go over to the left hand side and use join, and in the command line you can see it says 2 curves joined into 1 closed curve, and that is just what I need to hear. A few things we can do. We now need to create this cutout. What I'm going to do is use the more curves. I've got one edge at 70, one edge at 50, and the width at 40. So what I can do here is create, what did I say, 70, 40, I've forgotten what the last one was, 50, and click it there. And what I can do is drag that up. And what I want to do now is get the middle of this line here to be in the middle of this line here. And without getting too fancy, I just need to make sure that my O-Snap toolbar is on at the bottom, bottom of the screen. O-Snap, it's gone blue with bold text. I want to make sure end, mid, and int is selected. I'm going to turn off center. I'm going to turn off point. So I've got end, mid, int. And what I'm going to do now is use the move tool. It's on the left hand side. If you don't know where the move tool is, it's there where the cursor is hovering, or you can just type in the word move, M-O-V-E, enter, and you go, off you go. Here you can see I've got the midpoint. I hover over the midpoint, approximately where I think it is, and I get that prompt from the snapping tools, and I can move it from, and where's, again, watching the command line, point to move to, midpoint. Fantastic. Now again, for some people that might not be what they want, but again, this is how the model is made, so I am representing the model as true as I can. I'm going to select these two shapes. I'm going to use the trim tool, and I'm going to hover and drag select over those 2 lines at the bottom. Press enter. So now I've got that curve and that curve. Select them both, join, 2 curves joined into 1 closed curve. Fantastic, just what I need. Now I also need to make it as thick as the plane next that it will be against, so I'm going to type extrude curve, C-R-V-E, extrude, press enter. Both sides no, solid, yes. So in the command line you do have options you can play around with, and my distance is going to be 2. And that is my cue to leave, so I'll join you guys after the break and see how far you can get. Alright, welcome back, and I've now got my extrusion. I've selected my object, I have moved it around, and just like I did in the previous exercise where I moved that plane up, I'm going to bring that in roughly to position. Perfect. And I don't need that curve anymore, I can delete that. But in this view, it isn't where it needs to be. So I'm going to drop that back on the end. How cool is that? Okay, is that in the right position now? Let's see. No, this is not. I think that needs to go. If this is the top view. Alright. That's what a doorbell sounds like when you give it to a 4-year-old. Okay, welcome back a second time. As you can see, I've got my objects now in perspective, looking fantastic. All I need to do now is make sure that these things are actually in the correct place. And I can do that a couple of ways. I've got a bit of an overlap at the top here. I wonder if that's going to be a problem. Maybe what I'll do is I'll bring that there and just nudge him across. Nudge him one more this way, and that way those joints are a little bit more pleasing. So what I can do is I can select them both, and I can use the Boolean tool, Boolean union, and now that is one shape. If that's what you want. If you want them to be individual shapes, then you don't have to Boolean them. Maybe I'll undo that and have them as individual planes. Position it sort of where I want. So let's see on the actual model where that might be. So it is actually rotated on the baseboard. The corner of where the two meet is 12 mil from the edge. So let's do that. What I can do there is I can move my object to the edge using shift, and it will move from the end point of the model to the intersection. I'll do that again a bit slower. So I can zoom in. I want to move that point there, the corner, to the edge of this baseboard. So I'm going to use the move tool. I've already got my object selected, otherwise you would select the objects at this point. And because I've got my end snap on, I'm going to hover to the end, and I'm going to just move that across in that axis, and until it says intersection, click. Fantastic. Now I can do the same thing. I can right click on the mouse, and that will reactivate the last command, or I could type in move or press the move tool, and I can count essentially 12, or I could type in 12, and it will move it automatically 12 millimeters. Now this axis here is rotated around that point I've just moved as well. So to get my viewports to all fit this object in, I can right click zoom selected, the magnify with the yellow object, because I have a tendency to rotate the screen around, and I need to rotate it here on this axis. So I'm going to use the rotate tool. I'm going to click that point, and in a different view, maybe I'm going to select, or in perspective, I can choose the end of that object. So now you can see I'm rotating it in that axis, and I don't actually know the measurement or the angle. So what could we do here? We could do a bit. Let's just do it by eye. You could type a number in. Let's say 12. Okay, so 12's gone the opposite direction. Let's say -10. And that's the rotation I want there. So it's 10 degrees lower than its original position. And the edge of this shape is 12 mil from the edge again. So a couple of 12 mils. Not too bad to say that these were all eyeballed. And again, what I can do is use the move tool. And I can type in 12 and shift. And now we are in position. So it's 12 mil from the top, 12 mil from the side, and it's rotated 10 degrees. Looking good. What else could we do now? Now let's make the two columns with the yellow ribbon on it. So the two columns, they're both made out of the same piece of material. They're 40 mil high by 6 mil length and 4 mil depth. So I'm going to use the box tool for that. What did I say? 6 by 4 by 40. Excellent. And I can use the move tool. And I'm going to drop it on that corner. For the first one, it is 5 mil here. So I can just use this guy. I think I can just type it in here as well. So if I can drag it on that green axis and type 5 and enter, it will automatically snap it to that position. Which is great. And then this guy is 55. Now I imagine that that is from this, I don't know where it actually measures 55 from. So let's type 55 and use the measurement tool. Look at that, fantastic. So I actually did it from edge to edge, which is just what I needed. I don't know how Rhino knew how to do that, but there we go. And then for the same for this, it's actually a bit of a rotation on this axis, so I'm just going to eyeball it, use the blue gumball. And to copy this, because it's the same object, you can use the gumball to grab it, and you can tap Alt. See that little plus icon appear? Now I've got a duplicate. Eyeball where that goes. The rotation is a little bit more extreme on this one. Let's use the top view. It is a little bit like that, and I can use the XY plane to position that approximately there. Now what I need to do here is I need to do a surface that joins from here to here. And there's a few ways we can do that. I think, let's see, I'm going to use the control point curve, and I'm going to start from the end to this end, and I'm going to play around with the control points and see how that works. Although, looking in my other windows, my other viewports, I can see that by clicking on the top of this extrusion or this box, and then I want to bring it out here because that's where the curve actually extends over the baseboard. You can see in the top view it's looking great, but in the front and right views it's actually started to constrain that next point to the base plane, the base grid, and I don't want that to happen. So as a visual example, I'm going to click in the middle, and then I'm going to click on the top of my other box, press enter, and you can see that I've got this kind of swoop. It's down. I can move that control point. Now that's not too complex, it's not too much of an ask really to move that single control point. The problem comes though when you have multiple control points and you need to move a few of them and get the alignment correct in all of them. So just by eye, again using grid snap, I've been able to quite successfully move that point up. Another way we could have achieved that though is using the same curve tool. Using the top view is use the bottom option here called planar, P-L-A-N-A-R. Select that, and that will create the curve in the same plane that the first point was dropped, which gives us a bit more flexibility to go in and play around. So I'm going to be moving those control points. I actually clicked twice because I knew that planar was on and was going to be a good help for me. And I can do a few little manual edits of that control point curve. Let's see how it goes. So on the front it doesn't actually extend over the baseboard, but we do have a bit of clipping here. So maybe what I can do to fix that is use that control point curve, make sure I'm choosing the top with planar on, and I can navigate, click on the second point, do a few points here, and then again click on there and there. That way, even though the point is still on the box but the curve is off, I should be able to go in and have a little bit more control over that curve. Or that one's behaving a bit better, or maybe there's another option for another curve you could use. But I think that actually doesn't look too bad. Good, happy with that. I'm going to copy that again, so drag and Alt. And now we've got two parallel lines. I could have just extruded that one down, but actually this guy is on an angle on my model. So with that curve selected, I can now go in and manually select the control points. So I've chosen these three by dragging over them in the right viewport, and I can bring them up, let's say, to a millimetre. So I've got a millimetre there, and I've got, 10 mil, and I've got 20 mil here. And you can see now that I've got that kind of sweeping action. And there's a few ways we can create a surface in here. The first one is going to be a loft. So I don't really know where that is. I guess it's in the surfaces somewhere. You can navigate the menus, you can type it in. And I'm going to see if this works. It probably won't. So it's asking me for the first curve to select, followed by the second curve. Press enter, and I'm going to choose those options. Fantastic. Look at that. I've got a nice sweeping curve. It's transformed into a surface. Now I don't have much of an option, but in one of the nice things to know is, let's say that that curve wasn't straight and it may be ballooned out. What I could do there is, if I can find a decent viewport to work on, we can sweep the rails, which means I might need to rotate that so it is parallel 90 degrees to that arc. I can sweep, sweep to. So the first rail could be the top, for example, the second rail could be the bottom, and the cross-section curve is the one I've just drawn. And we've now got that kind of sail or balloon effect there, which looks pretty amazing. So it's basically followed that profile curve at the bottom. And I'll use that as a bit of artistic license for my object, even though on the model it doesn't have that profile. You know, you can use different profiles to sweep, so maybe if I just draw a quick line there and do the sweep to, top line will be my first rail, bottom line will be my second rail, and the cross-section curves can be the straight line followed by the curve. Enter when done, or right click, and what I'll get is a arc or curved surface, and then I'll get that kind of planar surface on this edge as well. So it does that nice variable surface. Okay, so moving on, we've got a couple of planar objects in different angles, and again I'm going to be eyeballing these and go from here. Let's see what I've got. I've got an object that is, maybe I can use a few of the freeform tools here. 65 by approximately 45. So let's see what I can do. 65 by 45 by 2. So I've got my new box. And I do have a cutout here of, I'll try and draw that freehand and extrude it. So I've got a circular shape, which probably has a radius of 45. So I've got my circle. I'll use a top viewport for this, and at the moment it is set to radius 1. If you want to use diameter, you can just select the word diameter in the what's this thing called? Command line. I'm going to choose radius for now, and I'm going to choose 45, and I'm going to take a segment of that. Now, where's the center? Now, to find the center of a circle, we can turn the center snap on, and it's a bit tricky. You actually hover around the circumference or the diameter, and it will give you the center. So there we go. So it's now given me the center, and I can click left, and it actually starts that line from the center, even though I was hovering around the diameter. I'm going to go to that end, and then I'm going to choose the end point, and I don't really know where I want it to go, so I'm going to overlap it there, and I'm going to use the trim tool again, select everything, and then you can start deleting the bit you want. Actually, that's the wrong edge. That's the bit that I need. I've got 2 objects here, 3 objects, and they all need to be joined into one. I'm going to do J for join, and then I'm going to extrude those 2. Easy mode. Delete the curve. Put these roughly in position, about there. And what I'm going to do actually is give that I need to Boolean difference this object. I think that'll work okay. I'm going to put it here, and I want to delete this shape, the selected shape, from the original rectangle, but I also want to keep the shape that I've just made. So a few things I need to check in that Boolean command. So I'm going to do Boolean difference, select the surfaces to subtract from, is that original plane, original box, press enter, and select the object to subtract with, which is my new shape. But do you want to delete the input? No, I do not. I want to keep that. If I press enter, we should have shape 1 and shape 2. Nice. And a few things we can play around with here, let me move him out of the way for a sec, is we're actually able to use the selection tool to manipulate edges, and it works particularly well with these cubed shapes. So what I've got on my original object is this edge it's not 90 degrees, it actually is about 2 or 3 mil along this edge. And the way that I can do that, I might want to use a ghost display. And I want to get this edge and move it across. I can use the Control-Shift click, and that selects just the edge. And I can use the red arrow in this case. I know I've got a grid snap on. I'm using the top view to get a visual cue. Just drop it there, looking good. That guy's already angled, and then this guy as well needs to come in as well. And I don't even need to see the edge really, I can just do Control-Shift and then maybe drag select in the top view. And as you can see in the perspective, it has actually selected that object. And I think I'm kind of going to go and try and get parallel to that curve there. Sort of right. I'll take it. This guy can then come back to be drawn from that point, from the top to the top. And in my model, this is actually rotated in a couple of different axes. Well, no, it's supposed to be one axis, my model's got damaged. So here I can just rotate that. Without using rotate, maybe I can do that using a construction line. So I know that the height here is going to be 25 and the lowest point is going to be 10. So what I can do is draw a line from the bottom, 10. Use my different viewports to make sure I'm going down. I press shift to make sure it's constrained and click, and enter. So I now know that that is the height, and I can drop that down nice and easy. And the height, what did I say? 25 or so? 25. Not going to use an angle into this. So I've basically hovered over the end point and it gives me that white star, which is a smart track, and I can go down and press the int. I can go above that and press 25 and enter again, and I now know that that's the lowest point and that's the highest point. But I don't think that's going to match, is it? What happened there? Let's try that again. Let's do 25. That is right. Well, let's see. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Let's rotate. So the top is actually like 24.5. I'll take that. I suppose that's what it looks like. And then this guy, I'm going to eyeball. So again, in the top view, it's not too bad. And in this view, we're going to go and rotate this edge down, which will be the green line here, blue line here. No, goes the other way. Oh my goodness. That way. Why does that want to rotate? There we go. And I need to drop that down. No, I think that's actually where it's supposed to be. So now what I can do is I can put some of the planes in there that are supposed to be holding those up. And again, I'm going to use a box. It's too thick. Use a 2mm. Just make sure that intersects, and I'll copy that across with Alt. And one little trick we can do, we don't just have to choose edges with this gumball. If I try to find an area I can actually see it. If I do Control Shift on the face, I can actually drag that whole face higher, which is quite a nice touch. And again, maybe I'll do Control Shift drag and drop that edge down. I'm using my front viewport there to see it. And you can see now that I've got that whole object encapsulated inside. And what could I do to fix that? I could maybe do a Boolean difference. Subtract from this guy and subtract with this guy, but actually I do want to delete the difference this time. Guess I don't. Subtract from here with him, delete input no. There we go. 1, 2. Just make sure they're actually intersecting. And the same with him, we don't really want that object in the box, so I'll do the same command. I can right click to repeat the last command. Subtract from him with him, delete input no, right click. There we go. Okay, I've got 2 more operations now. I've got to make this kind of huge object. Let's see how long that is. 15. It's about 250 by 10 by 5. Let's see if I can model that. Alright, so maybe instead of doing a curve or a box, what I could do is my rectangle tool. Instead it's 10 by 5, and I can position that where I need it, which is aligned with that, so about 10mm by 5mm. And I'm going to change the direction that it's facing. Stupid. If I can actually click, sort of in that direction, maybe a bit less severe. And what I can do is get a line. Let's do that before I rotate it. Okay, so I'll undo. I'm going to get my object and just extrude that. 250, solid, yes, great. And again, in this view, I can rotate. Just doing this by eye, sort of like that. So that's one thing it just did. If you notice when I rotated that, the gumball is what's called normal to the object. When I deselect and select, it actually aligns to the world XY here, which can be a bit tricky. You can change that by clicking on the little white circle, and you can do it to object or to the world. The world alignment is quite useful to navigate things around. This looks okay. The object alignment is pretty useful in other circumstances. For example, if I move that down, obviously it's going to move down straight in Z. I don't want that. I want it to move down along its own axis. So I can select it, do Object, and now I can move it along its own length, which is quite a nice touch. In my model I did actually chamfer the base a little bit, so I can do a Boolean differencer, subtract from him with him. Nice and accurate in the software, and I do have an extrusion going down roughly here. So what I can do is the same dimensions. Let's do 10 by 5. Let's roughly get it where it needs to be. Move it and rotate with the rotate tool from one point to the other, and I'll rotate it. It needs to be, and it's looking good. Okay, it's gone up, gone underneath. Helpful. Fortunately, grid snap is on. It's quite an easy fix, and I need to see how that intersects. So it does actually come out the top. So what I can do here is Shift, Control, click the face, drop it down a mil or two, and then I can probably do a difference. Again, subtract from the support with the object, and again don't delete, and now I've got two objects there. Looking perfect. And I've got two more shapes to produce. Sip of tea. Nice. And let's see what shape size this is. This is 1 thick material card, so 2 by 7 by 75. Use a box. Two 775. Bring it in roughly in position. This is parallel. Let's use the top view. Try and align it to that plane. Great, that box, and I can bring it up. Oops. And again, there's a rotation here, approximately 45 degrees. So shift is 90, so I'm going to type in 45. And do it to the world. Drop it onto that box here. Difference. Delete the excess. Okay, so we've got that guy. Now I just need to bring this up here, and let's see if I can do that. It's quite tricky. Let's see if I can put a curve on there from this closest corner. And what I can do is I'll just bring that across. I'll select the control point. I'll move it up because that goes across that junction. I used all my different views to assist me in moving that to about there. So I've got the height, I've got the XY position, and I know that it's connected to that. And what I can do here, see if I can extrude the existing face along this line. Let's see what happens. So if I do extrude along curve, so extrude curve along a curve is a second option. Extrude curves to, select curves to extrude. Now Rhino is quite great in the fact that you can You don't even need to draw the rectangle, you can just select them from the existing geometry. Now it doesn't know which one I want to select, so it's got this dialog box up. If it's not on there, you have to like escape and try again after moving around a bit. Mine is on there. Select it, press enter. Press enter once I've got my curves to extrude selected. And the path near the start is the guy that I've just drawn. And then I think I didn't click the right one. So undo that. Right click to do the last command. Select my edges. Aha! Look at that, that looks good. Now I do have an intersection there, which isn't ideal, but I'm going to live with it. Or am I? Maybe I can change that. Extrusion. So I'm actually going to move that line, select that point. I'm going to move it, use the move tool from that end to that end. Does that curve intersect? That does intersect. Get that point again and just drag that out of the way. See, I think that's a bit too much. Let's go there. Select curves. Well, alright, I selected one in the background. Control click will deselect, control click will deselect. Oh my gosh. Much better. Now I've got a hole in there. I could do a few things to fix it, but the easiest one is actually just made 4 independent surfaces. So I'm going to select all those surfaces and do J for join. You can see in the command line I've got 4 surfaces or polysurfaces joined into one open polysurface. So a polysurface is a collection of surfaces that have been joined, and what I need to do is close it, and I can do that by selecting it, and because these faces are planar or flat, I can use cap, C-A-P, and it will automatically close those shapes. So that was a pretty advanced tool there, and yeah, it took a bit of tweaking to get right, but this is looking fab as our representation of our model. What's next? I've got one small thing left to do, and I've basically got a shape that comes off 90 degrees here, and I don't know how I'm going to be able to draw that. I think what I can do is apply, in SketchUp it'd be great. I just select the face and I draw on it. In Rhino it's a little bit more convoluted than that. What I actually need to do is draw a plane grid, like an XY plane on this face, and then I can draw an extrude. So one of the ways that I can do that is actually in the C-planes tab, and I forget, I've got origin, elevation, set C-plane to object. Let's see if that one works. Select object to orient C-plane to. Oh, that was quite quick. Which side of it did it do? It did do the face of it. And what I need to do now is draw a rectangle. This is where we find out the thing's not even a square. Yeah, so the thing that I've just extruded did a bit of a funny job about it. So what I can do is trace over that with a line tool. Okay, and it's not being very helpful. So what I can do, it's kind of really freaking me out a bit, I don't know where I am. I've selected that end, clicked it with my line, and I want it to go along the edge. I can hover over the mid of that shape and get the white star, and now when I draw along there, okay, it's actually being dragged out by the grid. The grid snap is forcing it off. So I'm hovering over mid, I know that that is the line direction I need. I can use tab on the keyboard and that will constrain the drawing in that axis. So I can go 1, 2, and that's probably all I'm going to do there. I can get that line and I can copy it from the end, and now what I'm going to do is draw 2 lines to close that. Drag select. Hopefully that will join. J for join, enter. 5 curves selected. Why is there 5? Alright, let's see what this one can do. Extrude. No. 1, 2, 3. Oh, there's a curve there. J for join. Extrude. And the length of that is 30. Wow, so that was a bit complicated. But, you know, we are building our model, and that's what the model required us to do. Could have simplified it a little bit, but you know, we're not going to stand in the way of progress. And basically I've just reset the plane back to the bottom, just so it can, my eyes can relax a little bit. You know, rotating this object wasn't that complicated. We drew a curve, used the different viewports to roughly get it in position, and then I used the with the curve selected, I was able to select the control point. Did it from this point in the end, this corner. I then did a extrude along curve command and selected the edges of the surface, 1, 2, 3, 4, along the curve that I've drawn, which was there. And then in order to get this guy to be 90 degrees, you know, let's see if I do that to objects, or I could probably drag that back a bit. You see, I have got some odd behavior with that extrusion, but I'm sure that'll be fine for today's activity. Yes, I put the plane on the face of this surface. If I take it, ghost it out. Put the plane on here, so when I drew, it was able to just extrude 90 degrees out. Kind of like SketchUp, however, a few more steps were undertaken. So if I put this into rendered, look at that. Now in rendered view, I can see my curves. So I can do a few things. I can do edit. Sorry, I can go to edit, select objects, curves, and delete. I might want to give this guy a bit of a thickness, so I'm going to offset surface. The direction is the arrows, and I'm going to give it a 0.1 thickness. Okay, just give it a bit of weighting. It's looking good, right? Look at that. From the default rendering, it's looking fantastic. Now I can actually go a little bit crazy on here, and I can put some light. So if I go into render tools, bear in mind I'm no expert when it comes to lighting. Let's go into my different viewports. That is the opening. That is the direction. As you can see, lighting is updated a bit in real time. Select the endpoint, and I should be able to do that. I don't know, I can get some low lights effects. I do, you know, it's not perfect, it isn't Unreal, it's not going to win you any awards. This is just, you know, a decent, half decent space to get acquainted with the process. I've got a few different lights, so I can kill that light, and maybe I could put in a point light. Wow, that's quite dramatic. Again, let's make a booth, photo booth. So I can create a box that's 0 by maybe 1,000 by 1,000 by 1,000. I can explode that cube, and I can delete 3 of the faces, and then rejoin these guys, J for join, and I could fillet edge, let's say by 150. Okay, so now I've got a soft infinity wall. And yeah, you want to make sure that your object is actually sat on it. Okay, so now we can play around with that. Can we change the settings of the light? So select the light, select the object properties, which is this like rainbow donut. Light, color, yeah, we can. Intensity, shadow intensity. Amazing. So yeah, so we've got some decent options here. Maybe we want to go and add a material to our object. Now I'm in the same file that I was in a little while ago, so we do have these ones that I made. Let's kill them. So we've got a few options. We can do the little material tab inside the object properties window I opened earlier. I do have a few that I can choose from, but let's do a custom material. Let's call it card. And our colour of choice is going to be this lovely brown. It's got no gloss. Makes it rough basically. Reflectivity 0, transparency 0. Maybe I could put a texture on there. A few ways we can do this. We can drag and drop this material onto the object, or we could select the objects and I can right click, assign to objects. This guy was bright yellow, wasn't he? So custom, colour, yellow, it's kind of canary yellow. Again, and assign to objects. Yeah, it's not been too awful, is it, really? A few things we can try here is, well, what else could we try? What have I done? This guy, I'm going to lock it so I can't select it anymore because it was getting frustrating. I don't know why I've got this kind of clipping happening. Maybe on my work here I can track that. Am I upside down? 0.1, so it's 0.1 of a mil higher than the cube. We're really not going to get much of an effect. We've still got this clipping happening. Yeah, so not too bad. If I want to actually export a render from this software, I do have the render tool there, or I have it in the material properties. So we've got a few different options. We've got the viewport. Now bear in mind my screen's ginormous, so it's going to be a big export. Or we could do, well, yes, from the current viewport. Dimensions is going to be the resolution of that viewport, so it's quite ginormous. So let's do a relatively small Full HD, resolution of 300. So this is probably going to be quite intense. And we've got different options for backdrop. So we can have a solid white. We can put a gradient in the render. We can automatically put a ground plane in. So I don't really want to do that because that's obviously what that clipping is. It's putting a ground plane in for me for the render, which is useful to obviously give things a bit of context. Studio lighting. I wonder what options we've got. No environment. Let's go for the studio. Skylight rendering gives us the ambient shadows already. And obviously we've got the point light in there. And hit render. Well, whatever, continue. So this is called a Scanline Render, and it's pretty old school. And that's what you get. So the actual viewport and the Scanline Render, significantly more noise on the rendering. Different light menus, light options. You can change that to logarithmic and you do get a different crazy option. Post effects, so noise. So noise is already off, so if I add more noise, it's just going to go crazy. So, you know, it's not that great, I don't think, to use. Is there a denoise? Bounces 12, that's quite a lot of bounces. Coming back from Unreal, I'm really going to bounce it like 2 or 3 times. Different type of noise, okay. Basically making it up now. A little bit better, but still not really perfect for me, I don't think, at this time. So let's just drop this here. Render 1. Let's close that. And what I'm going to do is save the file. Saves it as a Rhino 3D file. This is obviously still locked. I'm going to try and have a quick search for the export options to Unreal. There's a Datasmith option there. Let's see what these guys are doing. Well, that looks good. So they're using OBJ. Enable the importers. Converting geometry to static mesh. Geometry. The object has its name in the properties panel. So we could export these out as individual layers. So I could have panel 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. in our layer. At the moment we've got default layers. Let's just delete that. Let's put that on. The way that we do that as simply as possible is, at the moment, if I click on this and do properties, the default layer is selected. These are all on the default layer. So if I go in here and undo that delete, layer 1, I can select this guy and do properties, layer 1. Now it won't make any difference because we're in the rendered view, but if I go to shaded, you'll see that my layer 0 default is black, which is giving me this kind of grayscale rendering. My layer 1 is red, giving me the red rendering. Layer 2 for this guy, you got it, it's going to be purple. Okay, so we can kind of break the object down that way. And we do have sub-layers that we can explore just by doing new sub-layer if you wanted to do that. And again, make sure these are named. Obviously all mine are planes, so they're going to be plane 1, plane 2, plane 3. For your project you might have something suitable. And you actually need to make sure that they are, so it makes static meshes. Save your scene to a Rhino 3DM file. Nice. I've already done that, haven't I? Rhino.3dm. So let's see if I can actually bring that in to Unreal. Whilst that loads. So yeah, just use the same Datasmith importer. It would appear. It doesn't have a date on here. Ooh, Costume Quest 2, free to download. Launch engine. Didn't mean to click that. So this is going in using Datasmith with the basic Rhino file. Make sure I import the geometry. Let's try a new. What do I want to choose? Let's choose architecture again, I suppose. With a blank with starter contents. Oh, no spaces. Okay, so let's see what happens. Desktop. Make a new model file to import it into. Geometry, materials, turn the lights off. Cameras, animations, import as NURBS, tessellate in Unreal. Great. What other options do I have? Edge length. Yep, that's fine. Let's just do what it can do. Yeah, so bear in mind, you've just come into a new piece of software, so all the movement options are out of whack. Got no idea what I'm doing. Here we go. Look at this guy. I'm going to move my camera speed down. He is very small. Got basic materials on there. I wonder if I can quickly add some materials. What shall we do? Make it poured concrete. So again, I can do using the world outliner. I've got all these B wraps. That's what they're calling them, extrusions. And I can go to the static meshes there. Materials, 3 materials. I'm going to choose these 2 here. I want that yellow one to be different. Let's use concrete poured for the 2 cardboard ones. And this one here can have a nice gold ribbon. But concrete poured. So now we see we are having a few issues which I need to address, which is the, gosh, this camera is snappy. We need to address the UV mapping scale. It's quite okay for there, but you can see that it looks okay on the top surface, but actually on the sides here it's not good. This one appears to be quite stretched. Maybe what I can do here is scale this whole thing, which obviously is going to ruin it all, but it's far too small. There we go, it's a bit more manageable. Why are you, okay, you're on layer 2. Okay, so you see we've got the different layers coming through. So that's good that it keeps its management that way. Poured concrete for you. Poured concrete for you. Turn my camera speed back up. Can we drop an Hdri in there? Lights. Hdri backdrop. Okay. Do have lights in here somewhere. So what have you got? I think we've got a default light, haven't we? We have sun sky. So let's delete that for now. get my game settings, my exposure off. It's super shiny. My lit, game settings off. And let's rebuild those lights. Yeah, look at that, nice and quick. Again, the scaling of those materials is pretty awful. What else could I try? I could try putting in a sun directional light. Build that. And I can change the colour, give it a bit of yellow. I could use temperature, might work a bit better. I could turn the intensity down a bit, just so it's a bit of a subtle glow. That yellow is a bit canary, isn't it? Let's drop that back to white and use temperature. There we go. Again, I can rebuild that light. Lovely. And let's see how the light responds to the object in this software. So I can do a point light. Let's go back to that lovely magenta. Intensity is, let's say, default at 8. Let's keep it at 8. And I'm going to have it as set to movable. So it's going to take a bit longer to bake the object if it's set to movable, but we are able to then explore our geometries as we choose to and see those lights and shadows update accordingly. Amazing. Okay, so yeah, those shadows are a little bit more rounded, where applicable. It's a shame we've got some stretching on the UVs. I wonder if I go back to Rhino, am I able to drop in a, let's go back to the rendered view. Alright, so yeah, I don't know about you guys, but that is night and day difference. I know it's a slightly different setup, but not too shabby. Okay, what am I trying to do here? Materials. Let's go back into materials. Texture. So let's give it a texture. Let's see if I can find that material from here. So find it in the browser. Can I find it in Explorer? It's there. Great, so it's not that. Let's see if I can find the texture. Show the texture in Explorer. It should just be a... Oh, they're all flipping. They're not even JPEGs. So let's find a... more concrete texture. Oh, why did I do it on that one? God. Texture. Okay, so you can see we've got the same effect happening in Rhino. Oh yeah, that's just the opacity of it. Yep. So I need to check how we modify this. I'm sure I've done it in the past. But yeah, we need to basically scale the X and Y or the Z material or texture map. The reason being is that it will take that information in the datasmith and it will translate that for us from one software to another. Can't quite remember how to approach that. So I guess I'll be doing another video. So until then, enjoy what we've made today. Hopefully you can see some of the tools in action, and you did get to see a little preview of how quickly it's possible to import into Unreal. You know, and again, those HDRs, this is just the basic one. You can go to HDRI Haven and get some studio shots if that's more your thing, or whatever. So enjoy.